There are nights when your body has been lying in bed for hours. The room has fallen completely silent, yet inside your mind, hundreds of conversations are still unfinished. You replay something someone said days ago and wonder if you answered the wrong way. You imagine things that have never happened and worry as if they already have. You try to fall asleep, but your mind opens another door, then another, and another. The strange part is that people often look at you and say, "You're overthinking, just stop thinking so much." If it were really that simple, you wouldn't be living inside a brain that never seems to turn off. Here's a truth that most people misunderstand about those who overthink. It's not that they enjoy making themselves suffer. It's not that they're weak. And it's not because they're simply being negative. Sometimes their brain is doing everything it knows to keep them safe. Many studies suggest that the human brain is designed to detect danger before it notices safety. That instinct helped our ancestors survive. But for some people, that alarm system is far more sensitive than average. It's like a smoke detector that goes off from nothing more than a little steam. Not because the house is actually on fire, but because it fears missing the one moment when it truly is. So, you begin checking everything. You check your words. You check other people's expressions. You check unread messages. You even check things that no one else notices. Not because you love being in control, but because your mind keeps asking the same question. What if I missed something? Maybe you've sent someone a perfectly ordinary text. They've seen it, but they haven't replied. Within minutes, your mind has already written an entire list of possibilities. Did I say something wrong? Are they upset with me? Are they tired of me? When in reality, they may simply be busy. People who overthink rarely react to what is actually happening. They react to the stories their brain quietly creates. Their mind is like a film director who never calls cut. It keeps producing movies that, most of the time, will never become reality. The exhausting part isn't the event itself. It's living through it dozens of times before it ever arrives. There is something fascinating about cognitive psychology. The brain doesn't always fully distinguish between a vividly imagined threat and a real one. When you repeatedly picture worst-case scenarios, your body can release stress hormones as though you're facing genuine danger. That's why so many people feel completely drained, even after a day that seemed physically uneventful. They're not running a marathon outside. They're running one inside their minds. And that race has no finish line. People often say that overthinkers just need to relax. But that's like telling someone who's drowning to simply breathe calmly. The issue isn't a lack of willpower. It's the way their nervous system learned to survive. Some psychologists believe that childhood experiences play an important role. If you grew up in a home where the adult's emotions changed without warning, you learned to study every facial expression, every shift in tone, every sigh. Not because you were curious, because you needed to know when to stay quiet, when to apologize, when to disappear. Over time, that survival skill became your default setting. You entered adulthood, but your emotional radar never powered down. You notice the smallest changes. You realize someone feels different today than they did yesterday. You sense the atmosphere in a room shifting. You hear what people never say out loud. People call you sensitive. Very few understand the price of that sensitivity. You become like a sponge, absorbing every emotion around you. You feel other people's joy, but their pain soaks into you even faster. By the end of the day, you no longer know which feelings belong to you. That's why people who overthink often feel responsible for everyone else's emotional state. If someone seems sad, they immediately wonder what they did wrong. If someone grows distant, they assume they weren't enough. If a relationship falls apart, they spend months replaying every tiny detail. When sometimes the truth is much simpler. Not every storm is one you created. Not every fire is yours to put out. Yet your mind keeps trying to carry them all. Because for so long, you've been carrying responsibilities that never truly belong to you. Think back to the last small mistake you made. Maybe you sent the wrong message, forgot to reply, said something awkward. Most people would move on within hours, but not you. You replay it, rewrite it, imagine dozens of different versions, as though you could somehow travel back in time and rescue a moment that no longer exists. For someone who overthinks, memories become an invisible suitcase. Every painful experience gets carefully folded and packed away. At first, the suitcase feels light. Years later, they no longer remember everything inside. They only know they're carrying something unbearably heavy. Here's the painful paradox. People who think the most often care the most. They notice, They listen. They remember little things. They try so hard not to hurt anyone. And in doing so, they often forget that they deserve the same kindness. They spend so much of life reading everyone else's emotions that no one ever notices the exhaustion written across their own face. Some smiles are beautiful, but behind them is a brain that has never truly rested. Some people appear calm, yet inside, they're like a quiet lake stirred endlessly by invisible winds. Everyone else sees only the surface. They're the only ones who hear the waves. Perhaps the deepest pain isn't the thinking itself. It's feeling misunderstood. Because on the outside, they still go to work, still care for their families, still smile, still answer, "I'm fine." No one knows that making even the smallest decision required dozens of internal debates. No one knows that sending one simple text meant rewriting it over and over until all the original emotion disappeared. No one knows how often they wonder whether they're bothering someone just by existing. Here's a question worth asking. If someone you deeply loved made a small mistake, what would you tell them? You'd probably remind them that everyone slips sometimes, that it's okay, that they don't need to be so hard on themselves. Yet when that person is you, every ounce of compassion disappears. You become your own harshest judge. Your mind becomes a courtroom where you're never found innocent. There's always another piece of evidence, another question, another reason to worry. But thinking more doesn't necessarily mean seeing reality more clearly. Sometimes it simply means looking at the same situation through hundreds of distorted mirrors. Each reflection makes fear grow a little larger, until you can no longer remember what the original picture looked like. That doesn't mean you must force yourself to stop thinking. The brain isn't an on and off switch. You can't simply command it to stop. What you can learn is to change your relationship with your thoughts. Imagine your emotions as smoke. The harder you try to grab the smoke with your hands, the more chaotic the room becomes. But if you simply open a window, the smoke eventually finds its own way out. Thoughts work the same way. Not every thought deserves your belief. Not every prediction is reality. Not every feeling is evidence. You can observe them without obeying them. You can watch a thought drift by the way you watch a cloud crossing the sky. No need to hold on, no need to chase it away. Just notice that it's there. Another lesson matters just as much. Learn the difference between compassion and responsibility. You can love someone without healing every wound they carry. You can listen without carrying all of their sadness. You can care deeply while still protecting your own peace. Boundaries are not selfish. They're the front door that keeps your home from standing open through every storm. If the door is always open, even sunlight will bring dust inside. Give yourself permission to stop solving everything. Some questions don't need immediate answers. Some relationships don't need endless analysis. Some silences aren't rejection. Sometimes people are simply busy. Sometimes everyone has difficult days. And many things happen that have absolutely nothing to do with you. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, if you're someone who overthinks, please don't see it as a life sentence. It's simply the way your brain once learned to protect you. It helped you survive. But not every survival strategy needs to stay with you forever. You don't have to fight your own mind. You only need to gently teach it that today is different. That you're no longer the child who had to predict everyone else's moods. That you don't have to apologize for everything. That you don't have to carry the entire world just to deserve love. The journey may be slow. There will be days when old patterns return. But every time you notice yourself overthinking without attacking yourself for it, you've taken one small step closer to peace. Healing rarely arrives like a thunderstorm. More often it arrives like sunrise. Slow, quiet, almost unnoticed, until one day the whole sky is filled with light. If you're exhausted today because of your own thoughts, remember this. You are not your mind. You are the one learning to understand it, to comfort it, and little by little, to lead it back to a place where it finally feels safe. So, let me ask you one last question. What thought keeps returning to your mind, even though it only leaves you feeling exhausted? If you're ready, share it in the comments below. And if these words made you feel just a little less alone, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join us in the next one.